r/VaxxHappened, Volume 6, Interactions with Anti-Vaxxers, posted by user Maybe Say Die. Everyone knows at least one. Tell us about yours here. Thank goodness I was fully vaccinated and my parents are full pro-vaxxers, but I get to see a lot of people trying to sell us the idea of vaccines cause autism. Whenever I see shit like this, I laugh my ass off, but then I get sad because these kids will probably not get to see adulthood. Well, tough life I guess. So, slight backstory. I've been friends with my best friend since I was 14. Due to us knowing each other for so long, he's seen me in and out of the hospital nonstop. Because of this, he's very strong towards getting vaccines. So last year, him and his wife gave birth to their first daughter. The wife, I'll call her Anna, was adamant against vaccines.
You're a fucking idiot.
Anna pulled all the stops of the basic excuses. Mercury, they kill more than they say, it's a live virus, blah blah blah. After months of them fighting and going back and forth, she would use the anti-vaccine defense lines, and my friend would use me and how important it was to vaccinate. After she clearly wasn't listening, he just flat out said, "We either get my daughter her vaccines, so I will divorce you." Wait a minute. I should say, "We either get my daughter her vaccines, or I will divorce you." End of story. The next day, their daughter got her vaccines and is on the road for the rest. Not exactly an interaction, but me and my brother went to the pediatrician's once. Yes, I'm a minor, and I was shocked to see a pamphlet talking about how vaccines can prevent diseases. This was in the US. I had lived in third world countries before. My dad is with the CDC, and I'd seen these kind of pamphlets before, but to see them in the US where people had access to public education and to the internet just stunned me. I come from a third world country, Colombia, and there was no anti-vaccination movements there. In third world countries, nobody would ever be stupid enough to be against vaccines. It probably has to do with the fact that families in Colombia are really united, and they often have 90-plus-year-old great-grandparents who the entire family cares about. And they tell horror stories about how when they were younger, people would die way too easily and way too often, and how people would have 20 children, but sometimes only 10 of them would ever reach adulthood. So people really appreciate vaccines and modern medicine in general. Honestly, such stupidity can only exist in a first world country. Really. Thank you for submitting to r/VaxxHappened. Unfortunately, your submission has been removed for the following reason.
You no longer entertain us.
My school is doing a debate on vaccines, and I, a fully vaccinated, and proud of it, media student with Asperger's, have asked to be the fake anti-vaxxer. I need rubbish claims to make. If you still need some claims,
if God wanted us to have all these chemicals in us, we would already.
And
My sister's hairdresser's mother's friend's daughter's kid got autism because of it.
Childhood diseases make kids stronger.
if you need any more, PM me, haha. My dad won't let me get a new vaccine, minor, because it's been pushed on me so much by the government. It has to be experimental or something. Mom has tried to reason with him, but he won't let me get the vaccine, HPV I think. I'm low-key scared that I'll just get sick and die from things that could have been prevented. Yes, I'm terrified of needles, but I'm more terrified of death. Edit. I forgot to mention that my dad won't let me get the other vaccine you're supposed to get at 16. Just turned 16 a few months ago. Hopefully, I'll get them soon. In Washington State, 14 or 15 years and up can ask a teacher for vaccines and they will take them to a health department to get vaccinated. At 14, parents no longer have access to their kids' records. As soon as you turn 18, get the HPV Vax series. It's a very important vaccine because it prevents a very common cancer. Parents are sometimes uncomfortable with minors getting it because the HPV virus is transmitted sexually in many cases, but it can manifest as a cold sore, but it can manifest as a cold sore and be transmitted with just a kiss. Both men and women need to get vaccines because of the virus's ability to be transmitted orally. I have a family member who contracted throat cancer from HPV exposure due to oral sex. It's not a pleasant thing to undergo. He nearly died. The cancer presented itself many years after he was exposed to the virus, and he passed it along to his wife, who had precancerous lesions on her cervix. I'm sorry if I'm scaring you, but this is one vaccination you shouldn't skip. My mom won't let me get a flu shot. I'm a minor. I get violently sick every other week, and it legitimately makes me want to kill myself.
Brother, I am pinned here!
Brother, get your flu shot ASAP if you are experiencing such violent symptoms. I can't, dude. She won't let me, and I can't drive alone until December. Well, take care of yourself greatly then. I'll be praying for you. I'm hoping that this is hyperbole and that you're not really suicidal. No, I am. RIP. Your mom sounds like a bitch! Don't let her determine your feelings. Are there any other friends or relatives over 18 that you could reach out to? My brother is 22, but can't drive. Gonna try to get my dad to take me to get my flu shot this weekend. Good.
Survive.
My son has a friend from school he spends time with. They're both 7. Sometimes I will accompany him for their play dates. I hate that term, though I'm not a big fan of the kid. The mom isn't so bad, I thought. Then we got into a conversation about health. It's straight to vaccinations, and though she said she's not anti-vax, she doesn't trust them. She told me if she could do it over, she wouldn't have vaccinated her kid. She told me that if she could do it over again, she wouldn't have vaccinated her kid. She wouldn't have vaccinated... Why can't I say that? She wouldn't have vaccinated her kid. She started floating along, talking about some new age meditation essential oils bullshit. Now I dislike her as much as her kid. This is one of the areas that measles had an outbreak. She couldn't understand it spread because herd immunity was weaker, no matter how I explained it. Now every time my kid says he wants to see his friend, I just let him go alone. I'm concerned that my mother is slowly succumbing to the anti-vax ideology. Throughout her life, she has always shown a mild distrust of science, government, and the chemicals and medicines/commercial products, although nothing compared to the level of distrust you might see in a typical anti-vaxxer. The problem is, over the past year, with vaccines having an increased presence on the news here in Britain, I've noticed her having increased sympathy for anti-vax individuals. The first red flags came when I brought up that I hated anti-vaxxers for their views on autism. I have a slight case myself, and my mother kept trying to justify anti-vaxxers' behavior as coming from love. Naturally, I was very hurt that my own mother would have sympathy for people who believe I would be better dead. However, until recently, she never expressed any actual agreement with anti-vaxxers. Today, with vaccines back on the news in the UK, she expressed the view that vaccines can cause autism if too many are given at once. I reminded her that the Wakefield study had been debunked, to which she responded that it was still valid in her eyes. And then the bombshell. She said that in hindsight, she would have thought twice about vaccinating me as a kid. I began to worry that I might not even be vaccinated in the first place, so I asked my dad to check my records. Thankfully, everything was there, but many of the vaccines were several months later than the recommended. I talked to my dad, and he assured me that he is entirely pro-vaccine, but explained that the only way to convince my mother to vaccinate me was to space them out. Now that I think about it, I remember her being reluctant to sign my form for the HPV vaccine a couple years ago, and the fact she refused to let me use non-baby shampoo and soap because of chemicals until I had my own job just adds to the mix. Like I said, my mother isn't full anti-vax, but I am concerned that her beliefs are getting worse over time. Luckily, with me aged 16 and my brother aged 14, we are fully vaccinated now. However, if my father had been a less reasonable person, or if my mother had subscribed to the anti-vaxxer ideology earlier, I might have ended up in a similar situation to Ethan Lindenberger, or worse, dead. Sure, it's fun to joke with my brother about how Mom's a Karen now, but deep down, I'm actually quite concerned about how anti-vax is seeping into normal families like ours and affecting otherwise reasonable people like my mother. I remember going to the doctors for a checkup. I was 12 at the time. I heard a lady on her phone in the waiting room talking to what I could only assume to be a relative of hers. Yeah, I don't like the flu vaccine. My grandma got it once and almost died from the flu. That's why I'm never getting it again. I remember just being really confused because I knew a bit about vaccines and that I didn't think the flu vaccine was deadly. My appointment was normal, but I still periodically remember that memory. The vaccine itself is fine. The problem is that when it comes to the flu shot, people have to figure out which kind of influenza will attack, or something like that. My grandpa was a doctor and always told my mom not to get the flu vaccine because it contained mercury. What he failed to mention is that it was a form of mercury that was safe for human use. Due to backlash against this, the flu vaccine no longer contains the mercury preservative. This has resulted in the vaccine being less readily available in certain places because of new storage and shelf life needs. My mom still swears the vaccine contains harmful mercury. I'm a teacher, and I'll tell you right now that getting sick from my gross students is... Oh boy, how am I gonna do this? Okay. I'm a teacher, and I'll tell you right now that getting sick from my gross students is 145,689,432 times worse than whatever's in the flu shot.